Hi, Jaguars. This is Antonio Perez, and this is Construction 120 Building Codes. I'm going to try something a little different. Because this is an online course, um, it's we don't do synchronous, meaning we don't all meet together in a classroom, but uh, being able to do this course online, I think, is somewhat difficult. Difficult for the student, and also a little difficult for the instructor. But what I'd like to try to do is we're going to go over the textbook together. And I am using a Google software that's called Read Aloud. And I'll show it to you up here. This is this little downloadable API that you can get free from Google. And I'm using the Brave browser, but I believe it'll work with Firefox and also Google Chrome. Um, you don't have to do that. That's not what we're here to do. But I'm just letting you know what I'm using. So this is our book. It's a Residential Code Essentials, based on the 2018 International Residential Code by Stephen Van Note. You should have uh, been given an access in the required textbooks or the required materials portion module of the module. I think it's module one. I give a link for where you can go online and purchase this. Um, in an effort to go through this together as a group, I've opted to create this video where I will play the book. So if you're not good at reading, um, because especially codes and code books, just a lot of material, a lot of information, and we find that it's pretty daunting. So I thought it helpful to create this video, and the video is just basically us going over the textbook, and we'll use Google Read Aloud to read. And then I'll join in to supplement where necessary, but I'm going to minimize that. And then you can use this as an opportunity to um, use your personal device and maybe some headphones, some earbuds to listen to and do this and listen to it passively. And then from this textbook, we'll be drawing out questions that will be used to establish quizzes. So, what I intend on doing is doing several chapters and then giving you an assignment for each chapter and then quizzing you for a group or a section. Um, being and having done that, then your work will be based on being able to answer the questions in a quiz or in an assignment, and you having had some exposure to the textbook, being able to know how to reference or go find the material. So, this book, Residential Code Essentials, is based off of the 2018 International Residential Code, which I've also given you the link. So, this book explains with a little bit more easier language of what the the book, what the residential code book will cover. This has more technical language, and this will be explaining that technical language and also explaining how to use the IRC 2018. So that's just a brief explanation on what we're going to do. So, as you can see, it starts off 2018 residential code essentials. And on the first section, we'll just kind of skim through and go to the table of contents. You'll see that the table of contents covers part 1, code administration. The introduction to building codes, code development, how they're developed. We'll talk about the building code's scope and limitations. So the limitations are, the building codes are broken down into several manuals. This is the IRC, but you can see building codes also have other manuals like the International Building Code, the IBC, the International Mechanical Code, the International Fuel and Gas Code, International Plumbing Code, International Fire Code, International Property Management Code, International Existing Building Code, International Energy Conservation Code, and the International Swimming Pool and Spa Code. You'll notice that it's real brief, that the majority of them take place, or a brief description is on pages 4 through 6. And then the International Residential Code, which is this course is mainly based on, will explain the International Residential Code, what that means, how it's broken down, and it applies to dwellings and townhouses, manufactured homes, accessory buildings and structures, existing structures. And then we'll get into the next chapter, we'll get into the legal aspects of permits and inspections, code adoption, adoption of the IRC, amendments or changes to the IRC, any appendices, and local and state law. And then it'll describe the authority, whose authority and duty is of the duties of the building official, how to interpret, also alternative methods and materials, and the evaluation service report. It'll get into permits, the permit application, plans and specifications, fees, permit issuances. And then further, it'll talk about inspections, the required inspections, other inspections, and your certification of occupancy. And then a board appeals method and process. Part 2 continues to talk about site development. Chapter 3 gets into preparing the site, like the location of the property, any fire separations or distances, the location for foundations when they're adjacent to a slope, how to prepare the site, general site requirements, soil properties, fill or backfill, and then it'll talk a little bit about storm drainages and flood hazard areas. Part 3 will get into the structural portion, where the structural, which broken down in several chapters. Chapter 4 talks about the structural design criteria. Getting into that, they talk about the perspectives and performance, basic loads like live load and dead loads, and deflections. That'll be explained. Wind, snow, seismic, and flood loads. Your exposure category, how hurricanes are affected in terms of the loads, tornadoes, storm shelters. It'll talk about the impact of snow, earthquake, and floods. And then chapter 5 gets into the foundations, how the material of foundations, concrete, footings in terms of the depth, the bearing, the slope, the sizing of concrete footings, reinforcing of the footings, and foundation anchorage, how a foundation is held in place. Masonry and concrete foundation walls, wall heights and thicknesses, any seismic requirements, seismic meaning earthquake, and height above finished grades, moisture protection for your foundations, like drainage, damp proofing, waterproofing, underfloor spaces. Then chapter 6 gets into the framing, grade marks, engineered wood products, trusses, wood treatment, cutting and boring and notching, fire blocking, draft stopping. Talks about floor, the beams and girders and joists that make up the floor, decks, the deck footing, the joists, the beam, the posts, and the attachments that are part of the deck. It'll get into walls, like studs, plates, single member headers, wall bracing, ceiling and roof. We'll talk about your ceiling joists, your rafters, your roof uplift connections, and attic and ventilation access. Part 4 gets into finishes and weather protection. Chapter, which is made up of, excuse me, there's a fly. Interior finishes, like gypsum board, backing for ceramic tile and other non-absorbent finishes, exterior wall coverings, water and moisture management, flashing, masonry and stone and veneer supports, veneer anchoring, siding, exterior insulation and finishing systems, window coverings, pardon me, not window coverings, but actual windows, roof coverings like underlayments, ice barriers, dealing with flashing, asphalt shingles, wood shingles, and shakes. Then part 5 covers health and safety. Chapter 8, 9, and 10, and 11 make up that chapter. And chapter 8 covers home safety like room areas, ceiling heights, means of egress. Egress is a way to escape or to exit. Egress is a fancy word to exit. So doors and landings, stairs, winders or winders. Stair winders, spiral stairways, stair landings, and handrails. And then protecting one from falls, guards and rails, windows, and sill heights. Emergency escape and rescue openings, window wells, area wells, and safety glass. Chapter 9 gets into fire safety, like smoke alarms, fire sprinkler systems, fire resistance and rated construction, exterior walls, 2 family dwellings, 2 townhouses, fire resistant rated assemblies, penetrations of fire resistant rated assemblies, dwelling separations from a garage, the fire protection of the floor, foam, plastic, Chapter 10 gets into health and living environments, the natural artificial light, stairway illuminations, natural and mechanical ventilation, carbon monoxide alarms, heating and cooling, sanitation, toilet and bathing facilities, cooking and cleaning facilities. And chapter 11 talks about chimneys and fireplaces, such as exterior air supplies, masonry chimney and fireplaces, which include footings, the requirements for seismic reinforcement, masonry fireplace details, hearth and hearth extensions, the clearance to combustibles and fire blocking, and chimney termination, and the manufactured chimneys and fireplaces. Part 6 gets into building utilities. Those utilities consisting of mechanical and fuel and gas, also plumbing. So under chapter 12, it covers appliances, the installation and location, the clearances, the location limitations, appliances in garages, protection from impact, exterior installations, access to the appliances, appliances in attics, and condensate. Exhaust systems, the clothes dryer exhaust system, whole house mechanical ventilation systems, kitchen and range hoods, bathrooms and toilet rooms with mechanical ventilation, duct systems, air return, combustion air, calculating the net free area of vents or grills, or combustion air from inside the building, or combustion air from outdoors, outdoor combustion air, 2 openings or single openings. Talks about vents, installing the vents, gas vents when they terminate at the roof, a direct vent appliance vent termination, fuel gas piping, how to size piping, piping materials, the systems that are prohibited locations, other installation requirements, appliance connections, shutoff valves, sediment traps, and piping supports. When it talks about plumbing, it discusses piping, the protection from damage, the testing of piping systems, water systems, and services. It'll get into sanitary drainage, the venting of systems, and the plumbing fixtures, fixture traps, water heaters. Chapter 14 talks about your electrical services, the grounding, the branch service circuits, wire and termination identification, and wiring methods. Talk about power distribution and receptacles and luminaries. Part 7 gets into energy conservation. It's one chapter which talks about building insulation, windows and doors, air leakage, systems, and energy certificate. Part 8 talks about protection from other hazards, and which is one chapter, other hazards of the built environment, termite protection, swimming pools and hot tubs, random control, radon control, lead, and asbestos. And then it ends with a glossary of terms and an index. So that's what the book is mainly consisted of. So this will be the end of this video, and we will get into discussing Chapter 1, Part 1, Code Administration.